Yo, what is going on, guys? It is Jonathan Bagan with the Weekly Scuffle, and I'm here to talk about an NBA mock draft. That's simple. We're gonna get right to it because these tend to take a long time, especially if you're doing a whole first round. So, first overall pick, I think that's pretty obvious. My favorite fit, probably for Victor Wembanyama in the entire draft. Of course, we're using the default settings, no lottery, because that just makes everything so complicated. Of course, it's gonna be Victor Wembanyama. I actually love this fit with Cade Cunningham. They got a lot of bigs here. I really love Jalen Duren, but a talent like Wembanyama you cannot pass up on, so that's obviously the pick here. And then of course we have none other than the Rockets. And while I don't necessarily like the fit because of the players that are already on the roster and more so their personality than basketball fit, I do think Scoot Henderson fits well with Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and the young players you have there, especially Sengun. So I think that would be a solid pickup for them. And then, of course, we move on to the Spurs, who, while I love Brandon Miller as a prospect, I really think they need a hit for a high upside type guy, somebody that could really change your franchise. And I really love Amen Thompson for that type of role for this team. I think that's a great pickup for them. Overtime elite, shooting struggles, but has that potential to potentially be the next big thing for the Spurs. So that's going to be definitely interesting to see what happens here. And my probably favorite fit for Brandon Miller is actually the Charlotte Hornets. I think him with LaMelo could work very well together. We still don't know what's happening with Miles Bridges. PJ Washington's probably gone soon. So I think that's a great fit for him alongside LaMelo. And great size too. It's going to be very interesting to see those two play together. And now we have none other than the Portland Trailblazers, who I really love, Jarace Walker. I think he's a great player. I would love if he could somehow come to the Miami Heat. Big physical power forward who could shoot, play make, do a little bit of everything, and is a great defender. I honestly think this is a solid pickup for any team that's trying to win now. And he's kind of like a supercharged Draymond Green in a sense, where I think his offensive bag is actually going to be pretty deep, but he could play defense, kind of like maybe Julius Randle on offense, but with actual good defense. So I think that's a very solid pickup for the Trailblazers. And then we move on to the Indiana Pacers, who I think they would benefit heavily from a player like a Swar Thompson or Cam Whitmore. And for the sake of this draft, I'm going to go with Asar just because I think he's a more high upside guy. While I love Cam, I think Cam is more of a surefire thing, and his upside's kind of limited. And you already got Halliburton there, you got Miles Turner, you got some pieces there. So I think Asar, might as well swing for the fences if you're Indiana. And then we have the Orlando Magic, who honestly, this is where the draft gets very interesting for me because I could go Cam Whitmore here, but you guys kind of already have a whole bunch of wings, and I'd rather go for Grady Dick. I really think that's a solid fit here, probably one of the better fits in the draft too. I think the shooting really helps you guys out. They don't really have a true shooting guard. You got Markel, you got Cole Anthony, you got Jalen Suggs, but they don't have a true shooting guard. So Grady Dick, that's the pick for me. I think that's a great pickup for the Orlando Magic. And of course, now we have the Washington Wizards, who should probably blow this up because my God, this team is in a very weird spot. They're not good enough to be bad or to be good. So I don't know. This team is struggling. They don't really have great pieces anywhere, any real building blocks. Johnny Davis kind of seems like a bust. Avdija, another solid player. Corey Kispert, solid, but none of these guys have high upside. And granted, high upside is something you don't really get with someone like Cam Whitmore. So I'm gonna go with Anthony Black. Kind of has that Josh Giddey built to him, which I think he could definitely achieve that Josh Giddey type role. And honestly, I think that's what the Wizards kind of need at this point, something different to their team. And now we have the Utah Jazz, who, surprisingly enough, Cam Whitmore has dropped to this point. And I actually do love Cam Whitmore, and I think he could fit very well with what the Jazz are building. And I think this is going to be a very solid pick moving forward. And of course, we have the Dallas Mavericks, who might not even have this pick. They are getting investigated. So this is going to be very interesting. But honestly, I'd have to really think about this pick because you got to imagine Kyrie may or may not leave. And Cason Wallace, solid guy. But the main problem with this team is defense. And someone that can play defense while also shooting is Taylor Hendricks. Also gives you size for this team. So I really do love him as a prospect. Probably one of my favorite prospects in the draft. And honestly, I think he would be a great pickup for the Mavericks if he were here. And honestly, we have the Thunder. This is going to be very interesting because the Thunder might actually make the playoffs if they could win in the play-in. So that's gonna be interesting. You know, Chet Holmgren hasn't even played this season, and honestly, I really do like the guard in this draft. You know, there are a few wings who could play well on this team, but if I'm being honest, I think Cason Wallace is the pickup here. Defensive-minded guy. You know, you already got a lot of offensive players on the team, so why not go for a Cason Wallace type player who could really help you guys out? And then we have the Orlando Magic again, who we got Grady Dick with the first pick. So, you know, there's definitely quite a few ways to go here. And I'm not entirely sold on what you guys have at point guard. I think Markel Fultz might be your best option, if I'm being honest. But I think someone like Nick Smith kind of just has to be the pick here, simply based on his potential alone. You know, he could definitely be like a Darius Garland. I don't think he'll be the playmaker Darius Garland is, but as a scorer and hooper, I think that's definitely the right prospect to pick up at this point in the draft. And then we have the Toronto Raptors, who, quite honestly, probably need a point guard. You know, actually, Nick Smith would have been a solid fit here. But I'm going to take one of my personal favorite guys, Jalen Hood-Schifino. I think he also fits the role of a point guard, newer age, more of a scorer than a passer, but, you know, so is Fred VanVleet. And Jalen Hood-Schifino kind of has that size to him, so if he could grow with players like Anunoby and Scotty Barnes, I think that would be a great pickup for the Toronto Raptors. And then we're moving on to the last pick of the lottery with Keontae George. You know, you kind of got that safe pick with Cam Whitmore. I kind of just spoiled the pick. It will be Keontae George. I do like his playmaking ability, mainly self-creation. I think is going to be a great pickup for them. And you pair Cam Whitmore, Keontae George with who they already have with Lowry, with Colin Sexton, you know, with Taylor Horton Tucker, Ochai Ajagbi, you know, Walker Kessler. I think that's a great, solid foundation for your future, and they could potentially make noise next year with that group. So we have the the Falcons. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 20 to 3, 20 to 3. All right. We actually have the Hawks, who I think could use any sort of help because they have not been good this year, and that's kind of crazy considering they did trade for DeJounte Murray. So you would assume they would have taken a step up this year, but they never really quite got their groove going. So I think someone like Jordan Hawkins, someone who is a winner, proven winner, was a top player on UConn who won the national championship, 3-and-D wing. I think it's going to be a very great fit for them and could help them with both DeJounte Murray at the point or Trae Young at the point. And then we have the Pelicans, who, in my opinion, don't really need much. They are a great team, and I really do like the Pelicans to the point where if I were the Pelicans, I'd probably trade this pick to actually get a serviceable role player veteran who could help out the team. But we're not there, and you know, I could definitely see someone like Josh Richardson being a free agent after this year. And while not the defender Josh Richardson is, this guy's a way better scorer, and I think he's gonna be a great player in the league. That's a Bryce Sensabaugh. I think he would be an amazing prospect to bring into his team, and could potentially fit that six-man role, maybe even a starter, depending how they want to roll with it. And then we have the Lakers, who, in my opinion, have a lot of holes to fill. But somebody I really like, who might actually go higher than this, is Kobe Buffkin. You know, I wasn't originally sold on him, but I've been watching some of his tape, and I think he could actually be a very good point guard, potentially even be higher, maybe in the lottery. And I think he could definitely fit this team. You know, he kind of does remind me of D'Angelo Russell now that I'm looking at D'Lo here. And, you know, I think as a playmaker, especially as a scorer, he could definitely be a solid contributor in the NBA. So why not draft him to the Lakers? You know, you've had great history with people called Kobe. I actually didn't even realize I was doing that. But we move on, and we got the Rockets, who, in my opinion, you got Scoot Henderson. You just need defense on this team. You really do. So I'm gonna go with none other than Derek Lively. I think another big, you know, you got Sengun there, but it's never, you know, it's never bad to have Derek Lively there. You know, he could just be a backup big who could maybe, you know, become an next Jared Allen. So why not? And we move on. We have my own Miami Heat on the board, which there's two players here that are left that I would like my Heat to draft. Those being Dariq Whitehead and GG Jackson, who is here. And honestly, I think both those guys are both high upside guys, potential bust. But I think in the Heat development system, they could both be solid foundational players. But knowing Pat Riley and his kind of draft style, he usually tends to draft from blue blood schools. So I think if Dariq Whitehead, a former, top three ESPN top 100 high school players being here, I think that's the pick for Pat Riley. I don't see him passing up. I could kind of see him being a supersized Caleb Martin, and I think he would be a great player for the Heat and for the Heat to develop. And then we have the Warriors, who honestly don't have that many needs. I really do love Chris Murray. Chris Murray is also a guy I wouldn't mind the Heat drafting, simply because I think he could come into the league as soon as next year and actually help a contender win, whether that's off the bench or maybe even in a starting role in limited minutes. I think Chris Murray, that's a perfect fit for the Warriors here, and potentially if you lose Draymond, could be a little bit of an insurance policy there. So we move on, and we have the Brooklyn Nets, who Ben Simmons is interesting because I don't think he really has a future with the team, but there's a player here I do like. That's Kyle Filipowski. Let me put some respect on that man's name. He is a solid player, and he's been very, very good this year for Duke. And I think this team is kind of lacking a center. You got Nick Claxton, but other than him, you don't really have much as far as bigs go. So why not get the next Kelly Olynyk of the NBA? And we move on to the Nets again. Who would have thought? And you know, you got your Kyle Filipowski, you got your big, so why not go for someone with tremendous upside, who I actually mentioned earlier, and could potentially be a superstar in the right development system. This team is not quite loaded, but they are ready to compete somewhat, and this player doesn't really have to come in and contribute right away. He could take a couple years, grow, and that is Gigi Jackson, who I think would benefit a lot from being in a team of more mature players and hardworking players, which the Brooklyn Nets have. And then we go back to the Trailblazers, who, in my opinion, kind of should just blow it up. I know, that's a very common take now. You got Dame, but other than Dame, you really don't have much on this team. You have a couple young pieces. I do love Anthony Simmons. I do love Shaden Sharp. You had Jerace Walker. That's a great young core, but I still don't think they'd be ready to compete next year. But assuming they will be trying to compete, I'd say, let's get them some more defensive versatility. I really do want to draft Noah Clowney just based on the defensive versatility that he brings to the team. But I'm actually going to go with Jet Howard because, another bigger wing who could actually play make and defend. Why not? Let's bring in Jet Howard and strengthen up that back line. Kind of salty Chris Murray isn't here for the Kings. I would love Chris Murray on this team, but that is not an option. So for the Kings, we're going to have to really think about this, and I thought about it. I think I'm going with Noah Clowney. I do like his defensive potential, and his offense definitely has room to grow, but the Kings are up and coming, solid team, and could definitely use a player like this who they could develop and improve. And now we got the Grizzlies, very, very interesting team. I actually am a fan of the Grizzlies, not really their off-court antics or Dylan Brooks specifically, but I do think the Grizzlies are a solid team who could very much use a wing. I really do think they could use someone like Leonard Miller. I think he's probably the pick here. It's either Leonard Miller or his teammate City Sakoko, I believe. I probably butchered that, but regardless, we're gonna go with Leonard Miller here. More of a bigger wing, but I think he could definitely develop. If he develops his jumper, he could definitely be good for that team. And now we got the Pacers again, who we actually drafted Aswad Thompson. We went for that high upside. Someone else who is also high upside and is still here at 26 is Ryan Rupert, who kind of serves the same purpose as a Swar, so I'm not really sure I want to go with this. So I probably am going to go with Maxwell Lewis, who is a bit more of a polished player. He's a sophomore, so I think that's probably the pick I'm going to go with here and let them figure it out. And, we got Brandon Miller with this pick. I know they have Mark Williams, but there is a player I really do like, and that is Khalil Ware. And, I'm going to take a swing on him. He kind of dropped off draft boards, but I think there's still massive potential here. And why not develop him? Potentially have two great centers for the future, and potentially even trade one in the future. And of course, we have none other than the Utah Jazz back on the board. And we got Cam Whitmore, we got Keontae George. I kind of wish I didn't draft Khalil Ware now, but you do have Walker Kessler there, so it's not that bad of a loss. So why not go for somebody like City Sissoko, who I think could actually be a great player if developed properly. He definitely needs a team where he could grow. He's an international player, but his ability is there. You see it. His shooting form is nice. His defense is there, but he kind of lacks that NBA athleticism. But I think he's a solid pick regardless at this point in the draft. And of course, we have none other than the Pacers back on the clock. And honestly, I think this team could use quite a few pieces. You got a Swar and Maxwell Lewis here. You kind of got your wings figured out. You already have your center there. It's very interesting where you would go at this point. I think just he is another wing, but a Swar, Maxwell, Rupert, they all kind of have like this Jalen Williams type aspect to them where they're all pass playmakers, shooting. They could do a little bit of everything, and I feel like that's kind of what the Pacers need. You don't really have a superstar, so why not draft a whole bunch of guys with potential to just be that next guy up? And we have the Clippers with the last pick finally. And I think this team really just lacks bigs that are really competent. So I'm going to give them James Najai. I think that's a great pickup for the last pick of the draft and a potential steal, if you ask me. And this is the recap of the draft, who honestly I think has potential of happening, but we'll have to wait and find out. With that being said, we'll see how all this plays out and see you next time. Peace.